What's the number one strategy for real estate in 2025? Well, you're about to learn about it. I'm going to bring on Atticus LeBlanc, the CEO of PadSplit, and you're going to learn about shared housing. And what it means is taking properties that you have right now and possibly converting them over into shared housing where you can double the amount of income you make, but more importantly, serve people who are unserved right now. Homelessness is up. We're seeing affordability is at an all-time low. What do we do as a society? You're going to learn all about it. And I'm going to just give you, before I introduce Atticus, one analogy. I had a property in India. It was probably one of my worst performing properties. I bought it for $17,000 years ago. I was renting it out for about $750, $800 a month. And every year I was having to change out that tenant and dump another $3,000 in it to do the turn. So I said, this is the worst property I have. I'm going to make it into a pad split and see what the numbers look like after a year. So I turned it into a 3-bedroom, 1-bath pad split. I get $200 a week, which is about $880 per month per room now. And I'm creating over $2,500 a month in income off of that property. When you take out the management fees and the costs associated, because they're really low, it's about $2,000 cash flow a month on a property that I paid about $17,000 for. And then to be straight up with you, when I converted it into a pad split, I furnished it, it was less than 20 grand. So I'm all in right around $40,000 on that property. And that's the income that it's producing. Now, are you going to get the same thing? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your community, but I'm just giving you that as one example. I took my worst performing single family resident and converted it into a pad split. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me. I can't change it. And you really ought to take a look at that. So here we go. Enjoy this video. Hey guys, Toby Mathis here. And today we're going to go over the number one real estate strategy for 2025. And I really believe in my bones that we have a major crisis on our hands with being completely underbuilt, unaffordability. And we saw a HUD report come out last week that says homelessness is up 18% in 2024. So here we are in 2025. What are we going to do about it? And I wanted to introduce you to Atticus, CEO over at PadSplit. And I want to talk about how this is working, what it is, and how it's solving the issue. So first off, welcome, Atticus.
Thanks, Toby. Yeah, always a pleasure to be here, and glad to be back again.
And I just made a bold claim, right, that it's the number one strategy in 2025. Do you agree with that sentiment? And if so, give us the reasons why you agree.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think for two reasons. Like one, on the demand side, you have higher demand for affordable housing than you've ever had, and that trend line hasn't stopped for the last 20 years, and it's just gotten worse and worse. Meanwhile, the supply of new affordable housing continues to fall short over and over. So you just have this latent demand for people who cannot afford, or more importantly, cannot even access, when you start thinking about upfront barriers to entry, housing that is reasonable for their budgets. And then the second thing is, on the investor side, you've got increasing home prices, you've got high interest rates. And so your yields are just not there on single family rentals, and in most cases, multifamily rentals as well. Whereas on a relative basis, you're increasing those yields 2 to 3x on average in a rent by the room strategy compared to a traditional whole unit rental, whether that is single family rentals or apartments. And so you combine those two things. And for me, it's always been a no-brainer. I've been doing this since 2009. And I've just seen the demand increase time and time again.
Yeah, and just to be really clear, PadSplit is basically shared housing for where somebody can rent by a room in a rental house, and they can rent it by the week, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we set up a minimum 3-month commitment, but there is some flexibility enabled there, and residents who become actually members of PadSplit have the capacity to transfer their membership across different units. So they've got a lot of geographic, social, and economic mobility that was previously unheard of for them. So they can move in. There's no upfront deposit. We don't even look at minimum credit scores. Yet we're still driving an effective collections rate around 98% right now. It's never dropped below 97.5 in our history. Largely because we're bundling all-inclusive weekly or per payday payments. But yeah, it's really empowering for those users who have never had access to over 16,000 rentals across the country that are fully furnished, and enable savings on average of $366 a month for people who are earning often around 30 grand a year. So it's been a great solution for those individuals, and a great solution for investors who are looking to increase their cash flow.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So I've done this before with shared housing, where I thought it was really rolling up. 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I think when we first started talking, you could see the writing on the wall that we were underbuilt, and housing permits were down, and that we just were. You could see us running towards this wall if you were paying attention, and you weren't listening to all the crap that was on TV and on cable. Right? There wasn't a crash coming. Everybody, oh, the market's going to. No, we're underbuilt by about 5 million units. So you have this huge issue facing you as somebody who's investing. Hey, I want to get a yield. I want to get a nice return. But on the same token, there's BlackRock and all these big funds coming in there buying up rental houses that are your turnkey rental houses. Now, I love single family residences and duplexes and fourplexes. I'm not saying negative things about that. I'm just saying that doesn't solve the issue. The issue really becomes affordable housing. Somebody cannot rent a house or an apartment nowadays. Like I'm in Las Vegas. It's $1,300 for 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Like a lot of people just can't afford that, and they can't afford the deposit, this huge deposit that you have to make, or they have to pass the credit and everything else, all these different tests, and they're not able to get that. So what happens is they end up unhoused, homeless, whatever you want to call it, sleeping on somebody's couch, or looking for alternative means. There's 2 things here. Number one, as a landlord, what we've seen, and this is my experience, because we have folks, there's probably about 1,000 units that I look at with my clients. Their net operating income increases by about 100%. It literally doubles.
Yeah.
And I want to verify, so I'm going to ask you to verify what your data is from that. And number 2, you're providing housing with less of a hurdle for those folks who are struggling to get housing. And those are the 2 things. You're doing a good thing for society. You're solving a big issue. And at the same time, as a bonus, and I'll go over my precise situation here in a minute after I let you talk, that you're seeing an increase in revenue to the landlord as well. Is that what you are seeing on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, consistently over the last several years, we've seen what we refer to as just 2x straight up increase in net operating income. And that is after our fees as a platform, after you pay a third party property manager, assuming that you do. So it is a true 2x increase in your net operating income after all expenses are accounted for, utilities, maintenance, everything. Now, in some cases, if you're managing yourself, you'll see that number go to 3x. And it's not at all uncommon in the right situations to see those types of numbers. That's relative to what you would have been earning as a single family rental. But the other thing too, Toby, is a lot of these high cost markets, like if you run a traditional single family rental or even multifamily apartment, you're forced to bank on home price appreciation because your yield just is non-existent. And this gives you an additional buffer to still capture that home price appreciation in these accelerating markets, particularly like you see out west or in some cases in Florida, but still get some yield to cover your expenses in the event of maintenance emergencies or natural disaster or whatever the case may be. And so I really think of it not just as a real-time cash flow benefit, but also as a hedge against risk, which is not necessarily intuitive for a lot of folks. But we talked earlier. I mean, you see a significant decline in your overall turn costs when people move out and then move back in, and the downtime that you're not collecting any revenue on that property. So
I'll go over real numbers on one of my properties that drive that point home. But what is PadSplit, first off, so that people know what you do? Great question. Again, I think it's the number one thing in 2025, period. I think that we have such a huge issue, and this is a solution. People are going to say ADUs and this. No, shared housing is number one, period. What is it? How do they use it? How do they benefit from it?
Yeah, PadSplit is a two-sided marketplace, not unlike an Airbnb or an Uber, where we pair individuals who are looking for this type of housing, who need low barrier to entry housing. They're almost always working full time, but they need options that they can afford. And so we take those individuals, provide access to private rooms in shared homes, typically, not always shared homes. Sometimes people have accessory dwelling units or garage apartments or even studios that are on the platform. But then those are listed by third party hosts, typically real estate investors, sometimes owner occupants as well. Sometimes folks who are looking to buy their first home that need to
Or
get
house
additional
hacking,
income
right?
to cover it. But generally, it's real estate investors who are looking to increase their return. And we sit in between those two parties. And so there are three buckets of services that we provide, and we focus on the things that most owners either cannot do on their own or don't want to do on their own. So consolidating all the demand generation, spending a tremendous amount of money on marketing and technology to get people into those rooms as quickly as possible. So we will cover our cost in just the difference in time that it takes us to fill a room versus what it would take you to fill that same room using traditional channels like Furnish Finder or Facebook Marketplace or what have you. The second thing that we do is all of the payments. So all of the collections, we're collecting those payments from users on a per payday basis or on a weekly basis, because that is the most effective way to drive effective collections. But from an operating standpoint, that gets really onerous really quickly for a property manager or an owner, where in a 6-bedroom house, for instance, you're collecting north of 25 payments per month on one house. And so we handle all of that aspect. And then the last piece is 24/7 customer service, a lot of technology tools built around how do we make sure that roommates are getting along, or if they're not getting along, that we have outlets for them to go elsewhere and find the living environment that's most appropriate for them, advising hosts on best practices, providing communication tools where they can message individual residents, an entire house, their entire portfolio, take in maintenance requests either through our in-house tool, which is covered in our cost, or using whatever outside property management software that they have. And so that's effectively our range of services.
And how much does it cost for someone like, and again, I want to be very clear with this. You bring in PadSplit, a 4-bedroom house now becomes 4 individual units that are rented, and you're renting them on a weekly basis. It might be a minimum of 90 days, but you're getting paid on a weekly basis on that property.
Yep.
And PadSplit's collecting everything. It's putting the tenant in there. It's doing everything that you're pretty much hands off when it comes to getting people in there.
Yeah. I mean, so certainly for getting people in there, if you choose to be, right. So our fee structure is such that if we're sourcing that resident, then we're billing you for sourcing that resident, and then an ongoing fee of 8%. But if you want to source your own resident, we give you full credit for that. So you don't get charged at all. Like, let's say, I don't know, your nephew needs a place to stay, and he works at the local auto shop, and he and some buddies decide to move into your house. Like, you're not paying to source those leads that you're getting independently. So you get full credit for those. And at the end of the day, like, if we're not providing value, we don't expect to get any fee for it.
So
you don't get paid unless you get paid.
Let's use that as an example, because some people think immediately, I have to buy houses, I have to buy them for cash or whatever. Could you do this with a lease? So you could lease the house and then say, like, let's say your nephew goes and gets a 4-bedroom house,
Mm-hmm.
and is on the lease, and then says, I'm going to bring in 3 roommates. You could use PadSplit for those roommates, and you could house hack.
Yep.
Either he's either leasing the house or perhaps he's buying it, whatever the case. And then it's a weekly payment. Let's say that they're doing $200 a week. That's not $800 a month. That's like $880 or something like that, $890 a month, right?
Yep. 4.35 times the weekly payment.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of juice there, right?
Correct.
So you could literally just run that through PadSplit, right?
You could, yeah. We have a number of hosts who run an arbitrage model. The one caveat I would say is make sure whoever you are renting from understands what you were doing and that they're okay with it. You never want to try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes and run an arbitrage model without them knowing. They always find out. It's better just to run it clean from the beginning. But yeah, you could absolutely do that. And the other thing I would say is, if you have a 4-bedroom house, well, one of the major benefits of a rent by the room model like PadSplit is, let's think about the formal dining room or a home office in that 3 or 4-bedroom house. Well, in a traditional rental scenario, you're never getting any additional income from renting that unit. The value is zero. Whereas when you're renting by room, the conversion of a formal dining room or home office to a rentable bedroom is almost nothing. And now all of a sudden that space, because you're renting that room, can generate that $880 per month. And lo and behold, your cash flow jumps considerably. So where there is more inefficient space, you now have the capacity to rent that space and drive your net income while also addressing the lack of affordable housing options in the market.
Is that about average? You're able to get about $200. Like, do you guys have an average, or do you track an average of what it is per week?
Per room per week? Yeah, it's probably 190 or so weekly right now.
So about
Across the average.
Right?
I mean, huge variation, right? I mean, a room in Miami is way different than a room in Atlanta or Jacksonville. A room in Denver is going to be way different than one in Houston. So yeah, I always encourage hosts to think about it on a relative basis. So look at whatever the apartment rents are in that local market or in a zip code even, and figure that for a studio or 1-bedroom apartment, your pricing on a furnished room is going to be somewhere around 60 or 70% of that cost.
Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned about there's a downtime. When you're a regular landlord, you have something called a turn. When a tenant is out and now you have to repaint, redo the carpet and stuff like that. I always think it's about $3,000 for a single family home in a typical situation. Does that same thing occur with a PadSplit?
Not at all. No, it's actually, it's a great story too, Toby. I mean, so I started rent by the room in 2009. I started buying a bunch of houses, primarily single family rentals in 2008, early 2008, and then bought apartments as well. We were buying commercial. And then I ended up in this rent by the room scenario in 2009. And so from 2008 to 2016, really, I was comparing P&Ls across all these different asset classes. And one of the things that I noticed was that our rent by the room houses just beat the pants off of our SFRs on a cash flow basis, particularly when you looked over a longer period of time, for precisely that reason, in that you think you're making great revenue on a monthly basis in a single family rental. And then lo and behold, someone's lived there 4 years. So long tenure, you think, okay, this is great, got a long-term tenant, and they're going to move out. And maybe it's $3,000. In some cases, it's 10, 20. The first PadSplit prototype that I converted in 2017, I had a $46,000 insurance claim, Toby, because the house was that torn up. And forget about like any revenue that you had, any profit that goes out the window. Like, you actually lost money over that period of time. Whereas in a rent by the room scenario with PadSplit, you have one room to turn. And so for our owners, the average cost of turning an individual room is $81. You're not touching the kitchen typically. You're not touching the bathrooms. You're not touching most of those common areas. You're converting a furnished room. Let's say, worst case scenario, you've got to replace the bed and mattress and replace everything in that room. It's $1,000 or less. And you still have revenue from every other room in the house that's covering that cost. So you never have the true vacancy loss that you would if you were turning that entire unit and then running the risk of vandalism, somebody coming in and stealing your appliances or just squatting in the property. So some huge advantages there that outside of just traditional cash flow comparisons.
If somebody's out there watching this that's already in a single family, give me your horror stories down in the comments.
Oh man,
tell me about your favorite.
This is gonna get.
We all have one.
Yeah, I've got plenty, Toby. I've chosen to to relegate most of them to my far distant memory. I need shock therapy to bring some of those back up. But yeah, I still keep a couple top of mind that are particularly interesting.
Yeah, it's always the law of averages. I always tell people if you have one rental, it could be a really bad year if you have
Yeah.
that tenant.
I mean, it's actually a great thing to bring up, though, Toby. I mean, a lot of folks assume, oh, well, you've got multiple strangers sharing a house together. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. My nightmares are far worse from single family rentals and multifamily rentals than they are from pad splits. For a pretty straightforward reason. Like the good news, bad news about PadSplit is I now have visibility inside that home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, right? Which means that my ability for early intervention to know when something is about to go wrong is dramatically higher. Whereas in a single family or multifamily rental scenario, my visibility as a landlord or a property manager ends at the front door. Like let's say maybe I filed for eviction on a tenant. Okay, well, there's no way that I am getting in that front door unless the house is on fire or the water's out or something. Well, if I have an individual room resident who is under eviction, I still have access to the house. I'm still sending cleaners out there. I'm still sending maintenance people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 5 other people or more, depending on how many people are sharing and renting rooms, that are telling me, hey, this person is breaking the rules or bringing guests over when they shouldn't be, etc. And so like I have the capacity to do something about it. It does mean that there's potentially more work to be done on the front end. But in most cases, it's stuff that I should be doing already, or stuff that I am incentivized to do as an owner to make sure that my property is well maintained. And so you don't really see those nightmare scenarios get out of control nearly as frequently in a rent by the room scenario as you do in a traditional rental scenario where, like, I don't know, let's assume you've got, God forbid, some domestic abuse that's happening inside a property. No one's calling their property manager to say, oh, someone's beating me up inside this home where they're renting as a tenant. Whereas if there's any form of violence or yelling or anything, like, you know about it in a rent by the room scenario, and you can intervene, tell that person, hey, this is not working out, and either you need to move on or you're going to end up under eviction.
And you could move somebody, like if there's roommates that just aren't getting along with each other, you could just move them to a different unit, right? You could
Yes.
say, go to this house over here.
Well, and a lot of times they will move independently. That's one of the most important advantages for PadSplit for residents is we move people in with no showings, right? So you don't have to meet people out there to show them the property. You don't have to worry about I won't name names, but like some vendor who lets people into the property when it's vacant and they can potentially move in and squat, right? You're moving people in, they're booking, they're paying, and they're moving in after the fact. But what that means is we have to give them an outlet in the event that they move in and there's a roommate that they don't like. And so they have the capacity to transfer to thousands of different options in the event that they move in and they really don't want to live with that roommate in the property. Well, as an owner, you don't want to trap them in that situation. It's traditional fight or flight response. Like, you want to allow them to move out and de-escalate whatever that situation happens to be. So in a lot of cases, Toby, they're moving out on their own. But yeah, let's assume that, I don't know, maybe they just really like cooking with garlic at 1 o'clock in the morning and it's irritating the rest of the residents. It's much easier for you to approach them as a host in that scenario to go move on to a different unit where everybody loves garlic or something, or everybody stays out.
Like does your eviction rate show that too? Like, do you guys have a really, really low eviction rate as a result?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I encourage hosts to always think about PadSplit or rent by the room relative to other options in their local markets. But there was a Wall Street Journal article about Phoenix recently and how they were blaming institutional investors. I don't know if it was necessarily institutional investors or it was just the market in general, but they were talking about a 16% eviction rate on single family rentals in Phoenix. We have a bunch of units in Phoenix as well. Our eviction rate is 0.1 across all
Wow.
16,500 units, our eviction rate, and that's eviction status, not necessarily eviction filing. So somebody could just move out even when they're in eviction status, and you don't ever have to actually file on them. But across the entire portfolio, it's 1.3%, which is far lower than what you would expect, certainly for this demographic, but than most single family or even Class C B multifamily rentals.
It's a fraction of what it is in the single family market. And I love the single family market. Like, again, I'm not bashing on that.
Yeah,
That's another area I'd
I
be
still
going
got a bunch
into.
as well. So
Yeah. But double your income and supply feed people who really need housing with housing. In fact, just as an aside, I don't know if you track this data, but how many of your folks come from the unhoused, from the homeless
yeah,
area that actually join in and come to
great
PadSplit?
question. Yeah, great question, Toby. Thanks for that. So we do a survey every year of our existing residents, and we know, for instance, like this is fresh off the presses. 8.3% of our residents in PadSplit, and keep in mind these are folks who generally have full time jobs, are moving directly out of an unsheltered situation, and 16% are moving out of either transitional housing or like an extended stay motel into a PadSplit. And then you've got another 30% that are living with family, often sleeping on somebody's sofa, that are moving in as well. So people think of homelessness as like, oh, I see that person on the street with a cardboard sign. What you don't see is like that's tip of the iceberg. And what you're running into in most markets across America is this invisible population who are working. You see them every day, but they are not the people that you think, right? Like the cashier at your grocery store, the TSA agent at the airport, the security guard at your local shopping center. In many cases, teachers. Like we have a great story from a teacher in Austin, made national news, who's living out of his car. And
Mhm.
so I think most of America just doesn't realize how deep this problem is and how few the options are. But yeah, another quick stat is like 1/3 of the entire rental population of the United States are 1 or 2 person households that also earn less than $35,000 a year, meaning they don't
Mhm.
qualify. Forget about can afford, like they don't qualify to get into $1,000 a month apartment. And
Yep.
if you look at whatever city you happen to be in, you realize pretty quickly, oh wait, like I don't see any $1,000 a month apartments available, or very, very few compared to the 1/3 of the rental population that needs them.
So you're providing the unhoused with a step up, a transition, because they'll never be able to come up with even the deposit. Just think about it. I don't know how you guys have run across that where you try
Sure.
to get an apartment or something and they want money ahead of time. Sometimes you're waiting weeks. I've known people that, were in the hotels trying to find a place, were on their buddy's couch trying to find a place. There's just not a lot of housing. Here, how long would it take them to get into a unit if they can, hey, I do a 90-day, I'm going to, and it sounds
Oh,
like I could transfer it around. So like,
yeah.
hey, if I can get a secure place, locked door, bed, things that I need, my own room, basically, better than a hotel, still a place to cook and all that stuff.
Yep.
How quickly can they get into a pad split?
24 to 48 hours. So
Yep.
it is really, really fast. And then to be able to get in, you were mentioning upfront deposits for an apartment. Typically for an apartment, even a cheap one, you need to come up with around $3,000 just to move in. For
Mm-hmm.
us, it's under $300. And the idea is based on a number of studies that have been done over the years showing that 40% of Americans don't have $400 to be able to spend on an emergency expense. Okay,
Yep.
well, what do they do? Like, how on earth can that person come up with $3,000? It's going to take them a long time to build up that type of savings. And so, if we can remain below that $400 average, then we're going to be an accessible option for those people when nothing else is available. But it's why you see so many people living full time in extended stay motels, even when
Mm-hmm.
those motels are significantly more expensive than an apartment, because they can access them and they can pay that first week, and they end up trapped in that cycle of just having to spend all of their money on that
There's
motel.
there's also
Um,
instability if you don't have a job that you
Bingo.
think like you're
Yeah.
bouncing around or you're in an area. and you can't do a year lease. A lot of these places want
Yep.
6 months to a year, and so you're kind of, how can you pull the trigger on that? You don't know if you're going to be there. Maybe you're going to be there just
Sure.
for a few months, and you don't want to make that annual commitment, or you're coming in on a work project and you're going to be
Yeah.
there for a shorter period of time. Then it's just too much.
Well, and
And
it's unknown, right? I mean, most, I mean, if not all property managers in America separate out utilities and furniture from rent.
Mhm.
Well, your pay doesn't change when the heating bill goes up in the wintertime. We were just talking about Atlanta. It's 24 degrees right here right now. Okay. Well, for most of that population, they're not earning more just because it's cold outside, even though their heating bill is significantly higher than it would otherwise be, or it's hotter in the summer. And for us, because utilities are included, they know exactly how much they need to pay,
Yeah.
which is a huge aspect of this model.
Well, Atticus, I really appreciate it. For those folks that are listening out there, please put your comments in, and just look at this. You're doubling on average. My experience, I'm looking at tax returns, people can't lie to me. Atticus, it seems like your numbers back this up too. It doubles your NOI, sometimes triples your NOI on the property. You're solving an issue. We had an 18% increase, according to HUD, of homelessness. Here's a large chunk of those folks are now able to get housed. You're actually to house the unhoused. You do good for society. You do good for yourself. This is why I think it's the number one strategy for 2025. And I hope people take a look at PadSplit. Go check them out. And if you want, for those of you guys who are investors, I offer this quite often on my videos. But if you type in free book down below, I'll send you a copy of Infinity Investing. This fits really well in with those strategies that we teach on the real estate side. So just type in free book down in the comments, and we'll send you a link for a free PDF of Infinity Investing. It was a best-selling book, but it'll show you how to invest. And PadSplit fits perfectly in there. And we'll show you exactly through our system how you can access and build up a portfolio of these types of homes and do two things: benefit yourself, benefit society, help those folks that are out there that are really struggling, because God knows it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And it's something that we really need to do something about in 2025. Thanks again, Atticus.
Awesome. Thank you, Toby. Appreciate the opportunity.